Crafting a good video game is a daunting task, and not all promising roads lead to a beautiful destination. It's pretty commonplace to see video games showcasing immense potential with initial showings, generating enormous hype and anticipation only to fail when they release to the public. To that end, here are 15 instances of such games that you probably wanted to get, but now are glad that you didn't get them. Redfall. Arkane Austin's Redfall felt like a natural evolution of the ideas found in its past projects, and the concept of meshing together systemic gameplay elements with the framework of an open-world experience sounded tantalizing at first glance.
Seeing sparks!
But Redfall felt way short of expectations upon release, and what we got was a barely functioning product plagued with design issues and technical shortcomings, and those who played the game were nothing if disappointed by that purchase. Immortals of Aveum. Immortals of Aveum's concept of using magic and spells exclusively for a combat-oriented game was pretty cool, and the first showings of the game made it seem like the developer really knew what fans wanted from such an experience. But when it finally came out, Immortals of Aveum felt like a faint flicker of what was originally promised, ranging from issues with player progression to frustrating visual elements and lackluster combat, among others, ultimately making it a disappointing experience. Biomutant. Experiment 101's Biomutant felt like a fresh take on the tried and tested post-apocalyptic open-world formula, complete with an interesting set of combat mechanics and a recognizable visual aesthetic. But when Biomutant was finally released to the public, it was clear that the game didn't resemble that original version, and what we got was a mediocre open world with some merits, but an equal share of flaws as well. Skull and Bones. The developer delivered an excellent open-world adventure with AC4 Black Flag, and Skull and Bones was trying to expand upon those ideas with a game entirely based on exploring the high seas and looting enemy ships. Delay after delay happened during its development, and Skull and Bones eventually evolved into another generic live service game complete with repetitive content and microtransaction-laden progression systems. Making what was envisioned as a quadruple A game into a disappointing release at last. Payday 3. Payday 2 is one of the best games to enjoy with friends, but Payday 3 naturally had a ton of hype and anticipation going for it. But none of that meant much when the game was finally released, and what we got was a bare-bones multiplayer experience that was severely lacking in terms of content. There's definitely some promise in the core mechanics, but Payday 3 starts to get boring after a while, which is not the mark of a great game. GTA The Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy, the Definitive Edition, packs 3 of the most popular open world of the 6th generation in a handy package, and soups it, at least in theory, for a modern audience. But in actuality, the package is a by-the-numbers remaster that's plagued with issues ranging from AI upscaled textures, intrusive weather effects, and questionable choices in terms of art direction. The remaster strips a significant amount of the charm of the original, ultimately turning it into a letdown for fans of the franchise. Saints Row. Volition's Saints Row had quite the ups and downs when it came to the mainline series, and the developer was trying to get the franchise back on its feet with the recently released reboot simply titled Saints Row. The first showings looked impressive with a sun-soaked open world and witty writing, but what we got at the end was a game that felt pretty dated by modern standards.
Why are you watching that now?
It's the orientation video.
I know what it is. Why are you watching it now?
Well, I mean, we're about to be shot at, so I figured it couldn't hurt to brush up on our healthcare package.
Repetitive activities, bland mission design, and inconsistent writing were just some of the issues that make Saints Row a game that's worth avoiding at all costs. The Callisto Protocol. The Callisto Protocol was marketed as the spiritual successor to Dead Space, but that didn't amount to much. The Callisto Protocol impresses with its superb visuals and compelling atmosphere, but everything that surrounded those pillars were underwhelming, which leaves a sour taste in the mouth.
And mates, I gave you a direct order.
This is not right. I don't belong here.
Listen, you know they call Callisto the dead moon. Dead. Just like you would have been if I hadn't fished you out of that wreck.
Between this and high expectations from fans, the Callisto Protocol wasn't able to fulfill what we wanted from that experience. Anthem. BioWare's work on Mass Effect has made the developer one of the most esteemed names in the industry, and Anthem had a lot riding on its shoulders after Mass Effect Andromeda turned out the way that it did. And as we all know, Anthem turned out exactly the same way, largely thanks to the publisher's interference with the developer's vision of the game. The final product was heavily marred by microtransactions and lack of interesting content. There were plans for a major revival with Anthem next, but those plans didn't come to fruition. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League.
Try begging. A little devotion goes a long way. I always knew you'd burn out, Harley.
When developer Rocksteady of Batman Arkham fame announced Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, the fan base was bustling with excitement at the prospect of playing as the titular band of misfits as they take on the Justice League. But as the game's release drew to a close, it became clear that Suicide Squad was nothing but a cheap attempt at using the credibility of the IP to gain a quick buck. And both critics and fans have been very vocal when it comes to voicing their frustrations with the game and its progression. Gotham Knights. Talking about all things Arkham, Gotham Knights felt like a natural evolution of past entries with its co-op-driven gameplay and a bigger open world. But much like Suicide Squad that we discussed, Gotham Knights' lofty promises were turned to dust in the face of a grindy progression system and uninteresting open-world activities, which makes trudging through its campaign an absolute slog at times.
You're doing what Bruce did. Fumbling in the dark, thinking you know what's best for Gotham, but you're fighting the wrong battle.
Battlefield 2042. Battlefield 2042 was looking to take the series to new heights with its take on modern warfare. DICE had some interesting ideas, but the final version was a disappointing multiplayer experience that lacked basic features such as voice chat. Between this and no single-player content to speak of, Battlefield 2042 quickly became one of the worst games in the long-running franchise, as player counts rapidly dropped and post-launch support slowly waned. Shenmue 3. Shenmue's brand of open-world gameplay has a distinct charm to it, and fans were naturally craving more of the same when the series was put on hold in the 2000s. Shenmue 3 was a crowd-funded game that tried to satiate those desires but miserably failed in the face of sloppy mechanics and dated game design, among a slew of other issues. Forspoken. Originally unveiled as Project Athia, Forspoken was marketed as the definitive current-gen experience with its stunning visuals and a vast open world brimming with geographical variety and distinct biomes. But the final product was a middling RPG at best, punctuated with a weak story and combat mechanics that failed to truly realize the potential of its ideas. Certain elements, like the traversal, were intriguing on some level, but those aren't nearly enough to redeem Forspoken's buffet of problems. Layers of Fear 2023. Layers of Fear looked impressive with its smart use of Unreal Engine 5 to create an appropriately scary atmosphere. But once you look past the shiny veneer, you'll easily be able to notice the many frustrations that mar this game down. The plot and storytelling leave a lot to be desired. The gameplay can be extremely repetitive at times, which can make the horrors a lot less appealing. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.